Ma'am, listen closely because I will only say this once. This bank does not cater to your kind of clientele. We have standards here, and people who look like you, people who walk in off the street without an appointment, without a suit that fits our expectations, without the appearance of wealth. Those people do not belong in this section. You should use the basic teller line with everyone else. Executive banking is not for you. And if you continue insisting, security will remove you in front of every customer watching. Do you understand? Those words sliced through the polished air of Liberty National Bank like broken glass. It was not whispered, it was announced, loud enough for customers across the lobby to hear. Gasps followed, some nervous laughter too, and for a few seconds time itself seemed to stop. Before I go further, I'll be quick. Type in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe and like if you believe stories like this should be told now. Let's step into that Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago. Dr. Maya Johnson, a black woman in her late 40s, carried herself with quiet confidence as she entered the flagship branch of Liberty National. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, carried a sleek leather briefcase monogrammed with her initials, and walked not as a stranger, but as the leader of the very institution she was now standing inside. But none of the staff recognized her. To them, she was just another woman who didn't fit their picture of wealth. The young teller, Elena Martinez, looked up with hesitation when Maya approached the premium counter. Elena was not cruel, just nervous. She stammered that regular services were over there while pointing to the basic line. Maya remained calm, her voice measured as she explained she required executive banking services. That exchange should have ended the matter, but it did not. It drew the attention of Michael Turner, the assistant branch manager, a man who thrived on appearances and authority. He walked out with his chest high, his tone dripping with condescension, and he delivered those words that shook the room, words he believed would secure his control. Customers turned to watch. Phones began to rise as a few recorded discreetly. In the corner sat Naomi Brooks, a young freelance journalist working on her laptop, already streaming her day on TikTok. Her camera caught the beginning of the confrontation. At first, just 60 people watched. Within minutes, it would be hundreds. Maya listened without interrupting, her eyes steady on Michael, her breathing controlled, inside. She remembered her father's stories of being denied loans in the 1970s, when he wanted to start a small trucking business but was told, in almost identical language, that people like him could not qualify. History echoed in her ears, but she would not flinch. Michael pressed harder, speaking louder, as if volume could prove he was right. He explained that premium banking required minimum assets of $250,000, proof of legitimate income, and verification of purpose. The word legitimate hung heavy in the air, a dagger disguised as procedure. Linda Barrett, the regional manager, soon appeared. She nodded at Michael's summary and reinforced his stance. To anyone watching, the scene looked routine, bank staff enforcing protocol. But to those who listened carefully, it was clear. Maya was not being questioned for her paperwork. She was being questioned for her presence, for her appearance, for her identity. Customers shifted uncomfortably. An elderly woman, Evelyn Walker, finally spoke from the seating area. Her voice trembled but carried authority. "Young man," she called, "you should be careful how you treat people. This is not the Liberty Bank I've trusted for 40 years. Michael ignored her. Linda doubled down, saying regulations required them to be careful with suspicious activity. Suspicious. That was the word she chose. Maya opened her wallet, sliding across her driver's license. A flash of platinum caught the light. An American Express Centurion card that few in the world carried. But Linda barely looked at it. She asked for proof of funds, income, and a detailed explanation of her business with the bank. Naomi's live stream ticked past 300 viewers. Comments poured in. Some were stunned, others outraged. One wrote, "This is discrimination, plain and simple." Another, "Somebody needs to stop them." Maya glanced at her phone. Missed calls from her general counsel, her chief of staff, her board secretary. The time read 2:52 in the afternoon. She knew a board meeting was set to begin in less than 40 minutes. And here she was, being humiliated in her own building. She set her briefcase on the marble counter, the soft click echoing louder than Michael's voice. Customers leaned in. Naomi's viewership surged. Evelyn Walker looked on with sorrow and recognition, as if she had seen this story before. Michael began a countdown, threatening removal in 5 minutes if Maya could not comply. Security guards shifted near the exits. One of them, James Carter, a veteran of more than 20 years, studied the scene carefully. His instincts told him something was off. Maya's posture was too calm, her belongings too precise, her eyes too steady. But protocol bound him to follow orders. He hesitated, watching. Naomi's phone buzzed. Viewership had passed 1,000. Comments flying too fast to read. People online recognized the briefcase. Some zoomed in and typed furiously, "That looks like a board member case. Could she be? No, impossible." Maya remained silent as Michael counted louder, puffing himself up before the growing crowd. Linda crossed her arms. Signaling her approval, David Collins, the regional vice president, appeared on the large video screen behind the counter. He had been patched in remotely. His voice carried authority but not wisdom. "Proceed with removal if necessary," he instructed. The words sealed the moment. Customers gasped. Evelyn Walker rose to her feet once more. "This is shameful," she declared, but her words were drowned out by Michael's booming countdown. 4, 3, 2. Maya finally spoke, her voice low but unshakable. "Mr. Turner, I suggest you read page 52 of your employee handbook, the section on dignity and respect." The room hushed. Michael faltered but continued. Unwilling to lose face, Maya's fingers brushed her phone. A single coded message went out. Code 7, initiate immediately. The meaning was clear only to her executive team. Naomi's live stream exploded, 1,200 viewers and climbing. The hashtag Liberty Discrimination began trending in Chicago. Maya stood still, her briefcase unopened, her eyes calm, waiting in that silence. The foundation of Liberty National Bank began to tremble, not from marble or steel, but from arrogance colliding with truth. The tension in the lobby thickened as Michael Turner raised his voice higher, determined to show authority, each word sharp and heavy with disdain. "This section is reserved for serious clients, people with verified wealth, not walk-ins who think they deserve special treatment." His tone carried the smugness of a man convinced of his power, and the crowd around him grew larger, customers pretending to scroll their phones while secretly recording Naomi Brooks's live stream, which had started as a background detail, had now reached over 2,000 viewers. Comments poured in like a flood. "She doesn't look suspicious. She looks calm." Another read, "This is racial profiling right here." Maya Johnson remained composed, her hands resting lightly on her briefcase, her breathing steady, her silence more powerful than Michael's booming declarations. Linda Barrett stepped forward, supporting her subordinate, her voice dripping with cold authority. "Ma'am, we have regulators to answer to. We cannot risk people abusing executive banking. If you cannot show documentation within the next 3 minutes, you will be escorted out by security." She gestured to James Carter, the head of security, a man who had spent 2 decades enforcing rules, but who now found himself trapped between orders and conscience. He shifted uncomfortably, sensing that this situation was wrong, but knowing his career could be on the line if he refused a direct command. David Collins's voice came once more from the large screen behind the counter, the regional vice president's face filling the monitor. "Do not hesitate. Protocol must be followed. Show strength, not weakness. The words sounded rehearsed, corporate, as though dignity and respect were optional. The crowd murmured, some in agreement, most in disbelief. One elderly man whispered to his wife, "This is outrageous. She hasn't done a thing." Evelyn Walker, 74 years old, who had banked with Liberty for decades, raised her cane slightly as she spoke with trembling conviction. "I knew your founders. They built this institution on service, not arrogance. Young man, you're shaming their legacy." Michael ignored her completely, puffing his chest and continuing his countdown, his voice echoing off the marble floors. 3 minutes, ma'am. If you cannot comply, you are out." Naomi's stream surged again, more than 5,000 people now watching, comments scrolling so fast they blurred. "Call the news." Somebody tagged CNN. "She looks like the boss. Why are they treating her like this?" Maya glanced at the clock on her phone. It was 3:02 in the afternoon. Her board meeting was scheduled in less than 30 minutes. She typed a short message to her chief of staff. A single phrase: delay meeting, emergency session. She slid the phone back into her pocket and turned her gaze calmly toward Michael. He mistook her silence for weakness. "You see, Linda, this is what I'm talking about. No respect for rules, no compliance, no documentation. This is exactly the type of person regulators warn us about." His words carried a venom he thought sounded professional, but to everyone else they sounded personal, ugly, discriminatory. The lobby grew restless. Some customers looked away, embarrassed. Others shook their heads in disgust. Naomi's viewers surpassed 7,000, and now journalists had joined the stream, asking to use her footage. The phrase, "Liberty Bank discrimination," began trending on Twitter. The situation had gone far beyond the walls of the lobby. Evelyn Walker spoke again, her voice louder this time, cutting through the noise. "Enough, young man. This woman has asked for service, not a spectacle." But Linda snapped at her, her voice sharp. "Ma'am, please stay out of this. This is a security matter. If you interfere again, we'll have to ask you to leave." The cruelty of those words silenced the room. Maya finally opened her briefcase, not hurried, not frantic, but deliberate. Her movements calm and precise, every eye followed. Inside, perfectly organized, lay documents, a tablet, and access cards. She did not pull them out yet. Instead, she set the briefcase lid upright, letting the initials etched into the leather. MJ, catch the light. Michael sneered. "Anyone can buy a fancy case. That proves nothing." He turned to James Carter, barking the order. "Security, be ready. 2 minutes left." James hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Maya more closely. Something about her presence unsettled him. The way she carried herself, the way she did not react to threats. His radio crackled, a voice from the executive floor asking for confirmation. "Is Dr. Johnson present in the lobby?" James froze. The name hit him like a weight. Dr. Johnson. Could it be? He stared at the woman in front of him again, her calm eyes, her confident posture. He realized the truth. But Michael continued, blind to everything but his performance. Naomi's viewership crossed 10,000. The comments exploding with shock as people began Googling the name. "She's Maya Johnson. Oh my God, she's the CEO." The words appeared in real time on Naomi's screen. The crowd in the lobby shifted as people whispered, some already recognizing the truth. But Michael pressed on, raising his voice further, shouting now to drown out the whispers. 1 minute, ma'am. If you don't comply, you're done here." Linda nodded firmly, David Collins's face on the screen giving the final push. "Remove her if necessary. Do not show weakness." Evelyn Walker shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "You fools! You don't even know who you're speaking to." Maya looked directly at Michael for the first time, her voice quiet, calm, cutting through his bluster. "Mr. Turner, you should stop while you still have a choice." But he laughed, a harsh sound that rang hollow. "A choice? You have no choice here. I make the decisions in this branch. Security, do your job." James Carter did not move. His radio crackled again. The voice of Ellen Rodriguez, Chief of Staff, authoritative and commanding. "Stand down immediately. Confirm Dr. Johnson is safe." The lobby went silent. Michael blinked, confused, his face pale but his pride unwilling to retreat. He shouted again, "Security! I said remove her now!" James finally spoke, his voice steady and deliberate. "Sir, I will not. That woman is Dr. Maya Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer of Liberty National Bank." The words dropped like thunder. Gasps erupted. Naomi's livestream viewer count surged past 15,000. Comments exploding. "They tried to kick out their own CEO. This is unreal. Justice is about to drop." Michael's mouth opened, but no sound came. Linda staggered back, her face drained of color. David Collins's video feed flickered. His jaw clenched as he realized the disaster unfolding live before the nation. Maya lifted her tablet, unlocking it with a fingerprint. The executive portal glowed, displaying board schedules, financial metrics, and her name in bold, Dr. Maya Johnson, Chief Executive Officer. She held it up, not for Michael, not for Linda, not even for David, but for every customer, every camera, every witness. The room fell into silence so deep that the hum of the air conditioning could be heard. Naomi's live stream soared past 20,000, now carried by Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. The truth was undeniable. Michael stepped back, his arrogance collapsing, but the damage was already irreversible. Maya spoke once more, her tone calm, each word deliberate. "You wanted to talk about protocols. We will, but not here. Upstairs, with the board." Her words carried not anger, but authority, the kind that did not need to shout. The clock read 3:10 in the afternoon. The reckoning was just beginning. The moment Dr. Maya Johnson lifted her tablet and the executive portal glowed with her name, the entire lobby seemed to exhale at once. Whispers turned into gasps, gasps into stunned silence, and silence into the hum of phones buzzing as words spread faster than anyone could control. Michael Turner's face drained of color, his arrogance collapsing under the weight of truth. Linda Barrett froze, her arms still crossed but her eyes wide with disbelief. David Collins, still visible on the large screen, shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight as the reality of the disaster settled over him. Evelyn Walker, the elderly customer who had pleaded for reason, raised her voice again, but this time it carried triumph rather than desperation. "I told you, you fools! You didn't even know who you were speaking to!" The crowd erupted into murmurs, some customers shaking their heads in shame, others smiling at the reversal of power they had just witnessed. Naomi Brooks's live stream jumped past 30,000 viewers, comments flooding in from across the country. "She's the CEO, I Googled it. They tried to throw out their own boss. This is going viral for sure." Maya remained calm, standing tall, her badge clipped neatly to her jacket now visible, the name beneath the Liberty National Bank logo leaving no doubt. James Carter, the head of security, stepped forward, his voice steady but heavy with regret. "Dr. Johnson, I want to apologize. I was given orders I should not have followed. From this point forward, my team stands down completely." His declaration drew a sharp intake of breath from the lobby. Security had switched sides, and Michael's last shred of authority crumbled. But Maya did not gloat. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked at Michael and Linda and spoke with quiet firmness. "You tried to humiliate me in front of my customers. Now you will explain yourselves in front of my board." It was 3:15 in the afternoon, and the board meeting originally scheduled for 3:30 in the afternoon had already been delayed. Upstairs on the 45th floor, executives were gathering in confusion as urgent messages from Maya's office rippled through their phones, but before heading to the elevators. The next act of this drama unfolded in the lobby itself. The main doors opened, and three figures strode in with the precision of soldiers entering a battlefield. At the front was Ellen Rodriguez, Maya's chief of staff, her expression sharp, her pace unrelenting. Behind her walked Anthony Reed, general counsel, carrying a tablet already recording evidence. Beside him was Sophia Grant, the national HR director, her folder packed with disciplinary files. The sight of them transformed the lobby's atmosphere instantly. Whispers rose again as customers recognized that this was no longer just a misunderstanding. This was now an institutional reckoning. Naomi's live stream hit 40,000. The comments scrolling so quickly her screen blurred. Ellen spoke first, her voice crisp and commanding. "Dr. Johnson, apologies for the delay. The board has been informed, and an emergency session is in motion. We recommend moving directly to secure facilities." Michael tried to stammer something, his voice trembling. I didn't know. I thought." But Anthony Reed cut him off, his legal voice precise and devastating. "Mr. Turner, everything you said and did has been recorded by security cameras, witnessed by customers, and live streamed to tens of thousands of viewers. Ignorance is not a defense. Discrimination is not a protocol. You will have the opportunity to explain yourself. But not here. And not on your terms." Linda Barrett tried to step in, her face pale. "This is all a misunderstanding. We were only following procedure, protecting the bank." Sophia Grant turned to her with a look of cold clarity. 12 years in management, Ms. Barrett, and not once have you demanded proof of legitimate income from a white customer at this branch. We have the statistics. You singled out Dr. Johnson because of how she looked. That is not procedure. That is prejudice." The customers who had been recording began nodding, some whispering in agreement. Evelyn Walker moved closer to Maya, her cane steady, her voice filled with quiet pride. "My dear, you handled this with more grace than anyone else could. They don't deserve your patience." Maya placed a hand gently on Evelyn's arm, replying softly, "Thank you. Today is not about me. It's about every customer who has ever been treated this way." The words landed heavy in the lobby, striking deeper than anger ever could. Naomi's stream surged past 50,000, her phone nearly overheating from the comments and shares, hashtags now trending nationally. Liberty discrimination, Maya Johnson, banking justice. Reporters had already begun calling the branch. News vans were reportedly on their way. David Collins's face still loomed on the screen, but now his confidence had evaporated. Beads of sweat were visible on his forehead as he tried to spin the situation. "Dr. Johnson, I see now there has been a miscommunication. Perhaps we should discuss this internally, without further escalation." But Maya turned to face the camera directly, her words measured, her tone unshakable. "Mr. Collins, this is not a miscommunication. This is discrimination, broadcast live across the country. And you told my staff to proceed with removal. Despite clear evidence I was a customer. We will discuss your role as well, in detail." The screen flickered as Collins struggled for words, his silence more damning than any admission. Ellen gestured toward the elevators. "Dr. Johnson, the executive conference room is ready. We should move." But Maya paused, her gaze still locked on Michael and Linda. "You both will accompany us upstairs. If you were so confident to make a scene in front of customers, you can make your case in front of the board." Michael swallowed hard, his bravado gone, replaced with fear. Linda nodded stiffly, trapped by the inevitability of what awaited. James Carter, the security chief, gestured to his team to clear a path. The crowd of customers parted, some offering respectful nods to Maya as she passed. Naomi kept filming, following at a distance, narrating softly into her phone, her voice trembling with the weight of what she was witnessing. "I can't believe this. They tried to humiliate the CEO of her own bank, and now the tables have turned completely." By the time Maya reached the elevators, Naomi's live stream had topped 60,000 viewers. The doors opened with a chime, the mirrored walls reflecting Maya's composed figure as she stepped inside, flanked by Ellen, Anthony, and Sophia. Michael and Linda were ushered in behind them, pale and silent. Evelyn Walker remained in the lobby, tears of relief in her eyes, whispering to herself. Justice finally walked in today. As the doors slid shut, the lobby erupted into a mix of applause and disbelief, the sound of history being written in real time. Upstairs, the board was waiting, but downstairs the story was already beyond the control of the bank. It was in the hands of the people, the cameras, and the truth that had just been revealed. For Maya, this was no longer just a confrontation. It was the beginning of a transformation that would either save or destroy Liberty National Bank. The elevator doors opened onto the 45th floor, and the atmosphere shifted from public spectacle to corporate battlefield. The polished wood panels and muted carpets of the executive wing could not soften the storm that was about to strike. Dr. Maya Johnson stepped out first, her stride calm but commanding, followed by Ellen Rodriguez, Anthony Reed, and Sophia Grant. Behind them shuffled Michael Turner and Linda Barrett, their once confident shoulders slumped, their faces pale, every step echoing like a march toward judgment. Security Chief James Carter remained by the doors, ensuring no one attempted escape. Inside the executive conference room, 12 board members were already seated around a mahogany table, their expressions ranging from shock to dread. As they glanced at screens showing live social media feeds, hashtags like Liberty Discrimination and Maya Johnson trended nationwide, with Naomi Brooks's live stream replayed on multiple networks before the meeting even began. At the head of the table sat Chairman Robert Sterling, a man in his late 60s whose voice usually carried calm authority, but who now looked visibly shaken. Never in his 3 decades of leadership had he been forced to convene an emergency session under such humiliating circumstances. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling began, "we are here to address a grave incident that unfolded in our flagship branch less than an hour ago. Dr. Johnson will brief us." His words carried a weight of inevitability, as though he knew the institution's fate would be decided in the next hour. Maya stood, her tablet in hand, and with a tap, the wall screen lit up with real-time analytics. "This is what the world is already seeing," she said evenly. Instagram viewers peaked at 60,000. Twitter mentions passed 200,000 in under an hour. Facebook shares of the live stream already exceeded 50,000. YouTube uploads from screen recordings climbing rapidly. The numbers were staggering, but Maya did not flinch. She advanced to the next slide. "This is not only a public relations crisis, it is a legal and cultural crisis." On the screen appeared bar graphs showing service times. Average wait for white customers, 4.1 minutes. Average wait for black customers, 11.9 minutes. Additional documentation requested, 47% of white customers, 83% of black customers. Security calls for suspicious activity, disproportionately against minority clients. Maya let the silence settle before she spoke again. "This is not one man's mistake. This is not one manager's poor judgment. This is systemic." A ripple of discomfort passed across the board table. One member cleared his throat. Another tapped a pen nervously, but none could deny the numbers glaring at them. Maya gestured toward Michael and Linda, who now sat at the end of the table like defendants on trial. "These two chose to make a public example of me, not realizing who I was. But this is not about my title. It is about every customer who has walked into our branches and faced the same assumptions. Today they happen to humiliate the CEO. Tomorrow it could be anyone else. Her voice was steady, calm. But each word struck with the precision of a blade. Anthony Reed, the general counsel, followed her lead, his tone clipped and precise. We now face exposure under multiple federal statutes: the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the Community Reinvestment Act, and the Civil Rights Act. Current legal exposure already includes 4 lawsuits totaling $5.6 million in claims. If this incident escalates, we could be looking at class action damages exceeding $50 million. Gasps filled the room, some members whispering to one another, their faces pale as the weight of financial consequences struck home. Sophia Grant leaned forward, flipping open her folder. As HR Director, I have compiled a disciplinary record. Mr. Turner, in the past 18 months, your branch has generated more customer complaints for discriminatory treatment than any other location in our system. Ms. Barrett, you approved and supported these practices, despite multiple warnings. And Mr. Collins. Her eyes flicked to the video screen where David Collins sat in remote silence. You ordered removal of Dr. Johnson despite clear signs this was a customer requesting service. David attempted to defend himself, his voice thin. I was following protocol, supporting my team under pressure. Maya cut in swiftly, her voice still calm but edged with steel. No protocol requires humiliation. No handbook authorizes questioning legitimate income based on appearance. What you followed was prejudice, not procedure. The words hung heavy in the air. Undeniable. Chairman Sterling finally turned to Michael, his voice stern. Mr. Turner, do you have any explanation for your behavior? Michael's hands shook as he tried to speak. I believed, she didn't look like. He stopped, realizing his own words were the very evidence against him. Didn't look like what? Asked board member Jennifer Walsh. Her tone slicing. Michael's silence was damning. Linda attempted to intervene. We face fraud daily. We must be cautious. Anthony Reed's reply was merciless. In 12 years, Ms. Barrett, not once have you demanded proof of legitimate income from a white executive client. We have the records. Your caution is selective. The room grew colder as the truth pressed in. Maya advanced to her final slides. 3 options appeared on screen. Option 1. Minimize and cover. Discipline internally. Settle lawsuits quietly. Hope the storm fades. Option 2. Partial reform. Terminate staff. Issue public apology. Offer training. Option 3. Complete transformation. Overhaul policies. Implement industry-leading anti-bias programs. Create a $25 million Liberty Equity Fund. Launch Liberty Watch app for customers to report discrimination in real time. Tie executive compensation to diversity metrics. The options were stark. Maya's voice softened but carried more power than ever. This board must decide if Liberty National will be remembered as a bank that protected arrogance or a bank that embraced justice. We can hide, we can patch, or we can lead. The room fell into deep silence, each member contemplating the cost of doing nothing. Finally, Thomas Reed, a former federal prosecutor and longtime board member, spoke. I have seen what happens when institutions cover up discrimination. It ends in lawsuits, federal oversight, and shame. Option 3 is costly, yes, but far less costly than denial. Other members nodded reluctantly, the tide shifting toward reform. Maya stood quietly, waiting, knowing that the next moments would define not only her leadership, but the legacy of Liberty National itself. At the far end of the table, Michael Turner sat slumped, his career already disintegrating before his eyes. Linda Barrett's jaw tightened as though bracing for impact, and David Collins stared into the camera, aware that his empire of authority was collapsing live. With the nation watching, The chairman cleared his throat. The choice before us is clear. We will vote, but let it be known. The world is already watching. And with that, the boardroom, once a place of quiet deals and polished words, became the stage for a reckoning no one could escape. The air in the boardroom grew heavier as the vote was called. 12 members seated around the polished mahogany table, raising their hands one by one. The decision was unanimous. Option 3, complete transformation. It was not just reform on paper. It was the end of an era of silence. Chairman Robert Sterling declared the result with a voice that carried both shame and resolve. Liberty National will embrace change, effective immediately. The words echoed like a gavel striking. All eyes turned to the three figures at the center of disgrace. Michael Turner sat slumped, his once arrogant posture now a portrait of collapse. Linda Barrett's hands trembled slightly on the table, but she tried to keep her chin lifted as if pride could shield her from the storm. On the screen, David Collins shifted in his chair, his jaw clenched, beads of sweat visible under the harsh conference lights. HR Director Sophia Grant opened her folder and began reading in a voice that was both firm and merciless. Effective today, Michael Turner, Assistant Branch Manager. Your employment with Liberty National Bank is terminated for cause. Grounds include discriminatory conduct, violation of customer service standards, and reputational harm to the institution. You are barred from entering any Liberty facility effective immediately. Michael tried to speak, his voice cracking. I thought I was protecting the bank. I was following rules. But his words dissolved under the weight of his own contradictions. Board member Jennifer Walsh leaned forward, her tone icy. Rules do not permit humiliation. You had choices, Mr. Turner, and you chose prejudice. His mouth closed. His eyes filling with tears, he tried to blink away. But no apology could erase the millions now watching his downfall across social media. Sophia turned to Linda Barrett. Regional Manager Barrett, you are also terminated effective today for complicity in discriminatory practices, managerial negligence, and failure of oversight. Records confirm you supported and approved behavior that singled out minority customers. And you attempted to silence a longtime client who objected. Your career with Liberty ends here. Linda inhaled sharply, her voice trembling as she tried to defend herself. I was protecting protocol. We deal with fraud every day. But General Counsel Anthony Reed interrupted, his words sharp as glass. Fraud is not the excuse you think it is. In 12 years, not once have you treated white customers with such suspicion. You cannot dress bias in the clothes of procedure. Linda fell silent, the fight gone from her face, replaced by resignation. Finally, all eyes shifted to the giant screen where David Collins sat. He straightened, forcing his voice to sound calm. I am a vice president. I was acting to preserve authority and order. My decision was to support my staff in the moment. Chairman Sterling's voice rose with uncharacteristic fire. Mr. Collins, you were watching a live feed. You saw the humiliation. You heard the arrogance. You instructed removal anyway. That is not leadership. That is cowardice. Effective immediately. Your role as Vice President of Regional Operations is terminated. Your name will be included in the board's public statement. David's face froze in shock. He had expected a slap on the wrist, not decapitation of his career. His lips moved as if searching for words, but only silence came. The boardroom grew still as the weight of judgment fell. Then Maya Johnson rose, her tablet still in hand, and spoke with measured calm. This is not about vengeance. It is about accountability. For too long, institutions like ours have buried complaints, blamed customers, and protected staff who abused authority. Today we make a different choice. She turned slightly, addressing Michael, Linda, and David directly. Each of you had a chance to serve with integrity. Instead, you chose arrogance. Understand this. The humiliation you caused today will live with you. but it can also be your chance to change. Whether you use that chance is up to you. Her words struck deeper than condemnation. They carried the sting of truth and the faint possibility of redemption, though none of them could grasp it in that moment. Sophia then outlined the next steps, her tone practical but unyielding. All 3 terminations will be reported to federal regulators, industry compliance databases, and professional associations. There will be no quiet rehiring at another bank. Liberty will make this public. We cannot preach transparency while practicing secrecy. The board members nodded, some grim, some relieved. The consequences were not just career-ending, they were reputation-shattering. Anthony Reed followed with legal detail. We will notify the FDIC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We will submit full transcripts of today's events, the live stream footage, and security recordings. Regulators will see that Liberty did not hide. That may spare us from sanctions, but know this: your names will be part of the record forever. The silence that followed was suffocating. Michael covered his face with his hands, his body shaking. Linda stared blankly at the wall as though her career had ended in a single blink. David, miles away on his video feed, disconnected abruptly, his screen going black, the coward's exit confirming the emptiness of his defense. Maya tapped her tablet again, displaying the Liberty Equity Initiative, a $25 million fund to support minority-owned businesses, mandatory 50-hour training for all staff, and a new Liberty Watch app for customers to report discrimination in real time. This, she said simply, is our future. We can either run from this storm or we can stand in it, build something better, and prove to our customers that Liberty National belongs to them, not to arrogance. The board members nodded, one by one, the reality sinking in. The chairman declared the meeting adjourned, but as people rose from their seats, the atmosphere was not relief. It was the dawning realization that history had shifted in those 90 minutes. Michael was escorted out by security, his head down, cameras waiting in the lobby to capture his walk of shame. Linda followed, silent, pale, her 12 years of work erased in a single announcement. And though David had disconnected, news outlets already reported his removal, his name trending alongside the hashtags that had nearly destroyed the bank. Maya remained behind, standing in the same conference room where so many quiet deals had been made. She looked out over the city skyline. Her reflection in the glass merged with the towers of Chicago. Her words echoed in her mind, words her father once told her after being denied a loan decades ago. One day, you will be in the room. Make sure you use it for more than yourself. Now, she had. And the true rebuilding had only just begun. The sun rose over Chicago the next morning, but Liberty National Bank was no longer the same institution that had closed its doors the night before. The fallout had reached every television screen, every smartphone, every newspaper headline. By 8 o'clock in the morning, news vans lined the street outside the flagship branch. Cameras pointed at the marble steps where customers filed in cautiously. Curious to see if the promises made in the boardroom were real, inside, the change was visible immediately. A diverse team of compliance officers stood discreetly in the lobby, each wearing a small badge that read, Customer Advocate. Their role was simple but revolutionary, to observe every interaction, to ensure that dignity was not optional but guaranteed. For many employees, it felt strange, even uncomfortable, but the message was clear. This was no longer business as usual. HR Director Sophia Grant addressed the entire branch staff in the morning huddle, her voice steady, her words leaving no room for doubt. Every Liberty employee will complete 50 hours of mandatory bias training within 30 days. This is not punishment. This is professional development. We will change our culture, not on paper, but in practice. Some employees nodded with relief. Others shifted nervously. but none dared to dismiss her words. At precisely 9 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Maya Johnson walked through the front doors, not in secrecy, not in disguise, but openly, her presence sending a signal that leadership was no longer confined to the 45th floor. Customers turned, some whispering, others applauding softly. The reporters outside shouted questions, but Maya moved calmly to the center of the lobby, holding her phone in her hand. With a single tap, she activated the Liberty Watch app, newly launched overnight. She showed the screen to the crowd, an interface that allowed customers to file complaints anonymously, to upload photos, videos, or transcripts of discriminatory treatment, with direct review by her office and the legal department. "Transparency builds trust," she said simply, her words carried live on multiple networks. "No concern will sit in silence ever again." Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and customers downloaded the app in real time. Within the first hour, more than 3,000 users had registered. Outside, protesters who had gathered in anger the night before now held signs of cautious support, reading "Justice at Liberty" and "Accountability Matters" at 10 o'clock in the morning. Maya sat with Evelyn Walker in the executive lounge, the elderly woman, who had stood up in the lobby when others remained silent, smiled through tears as she said, "My dear, in 40 years of banking here, I have never been prouder to be a Liberty customer." Maya took her hand gently and replied, "You reminded us all that courage doesn't retire." Their conversation, caught by local news cameras, became a symbol of generational continuity, one voice of the past validating the leadership of the present. Meanwhile, the numbers told their own story. Compliance Director James Wright presented fresh data by noon, average service times, which had once been nearly triple for minority customers, were already equalized at 5 minutes across demographics. Requests for extra documentation dropped 70% in less than 24 hours. Customer satisfaction surveys spiked 89% compared to the previous week. The transformation was not theoretical, it was measurable. News anchors across the country debated the speed of the turnaround. Some praised it as decisive leadership, others questioned if the reforms were sustainable. But all agreed Liberty National had shifted the conversation about race and responsibility in corporate America. On Wall Street, Liberty's stock dipped briefly in after-hours trading but began recovering by mid-morning, climbing 1.7% as investors recognized the crisis had been converted into opportunity. For Michael Turner, the former assistant manager, the morning was far harsher. He awoke to find his name plastered across headlines, his face replayed endlessly on viral clips captioned, "He told the CEO she didn't belong." Local news stations interviewed customers who had witnessed his downfall. National outlets dissected his words as a case study in unconscious bias. By noon, memes of his arrogant stance circulated online, shared with millions. His phone buzzed with messages he did not want to read, condemnations from strangers, silence from former colleagues. The board's public statement had confirmed his termination, and regulators had already been notified. His career in banking was over, and he knew it. Linda Barrett fared no better. Once respected as a steady regional manager, she now faced the humiliation of being named in federal filings, her complicity spelled out in legal language. Reporters camped outside her home, neighbors whispering as she left for groceries. Her 12 years of work at Liberty ended not with recognition, but with disgrace. David Collins, the remote vice president, attempted to hide behind silence, but it was futile. News outlets reported his removal within hours, and footage of his command to proceed with removal if necessary circulated alongside Maya's calm rebuttal. Regulators announced they would review his past decisions, and whispers of an SEC inquiry began to spread. His empire of influence had collapsed overnight. In stark contrast, Naomi Brooks, the freelance journalist whose live stream had captured the events, found her career transformed overnight. Her TikTok following ballooned to 300,000, and by the next day, she received offers from national networks. In interviews, she emphasized not her own rise, but Maya's courage. "What impressed me most," she told CNN, "was not just that Dr. Johnson exposed discrimination, but that she turned a crisis into reform within hours. I've never seen leadership like that." Her words resonated with audiences across the country, reminding them that history was often carried by ordinary people bearing witness. By evening, the Liberty Equity Fund had been announced, $25 million earmarked for minority-owned businesses and financial literacy programs. Board members contributed personal funds, raising the total to $28 million within hours. The announcement was carried live, Maya standing beside community leaders, her voice steady. "This fund is not charity, it is investment, an investment in the people we failed, and the people we will serve better tomorrow." Applause filled the hall, not polite, but genuine, the kind that rises when dignity is restored. That night, the FDIC released a statement. Rather than sanctioning Liberty, regulators praised the bank's rapid response and comprehensive reforms, calling it a model for crisis management and equity in financial services. The rating under the Community Reinvestment Act, once marked as needs improvement, was upgraded to satisfactory pending review. For the first time in years, Liberty was on the right side of history. But for Maya, the day ended not with applause but with reflection. She sat in her office, the city lights of Chicago glowing beyond the windows, and thought of her father, denied a loan decades ago, told he did not look trustworthy enough to borrow. She remembered his words. "One day, you'll be in the room. Use it well." Now she had. She looked down at her tablet, the Liberty Watch app already buzzing with reports. Each notification was not a burden but a reminder that change was real, visible, and accountable. She closed her eyes, exhausted but steady, knowing the work ahead was immense. Liberty National had survived its darkest hour, but the real test was just beginning, the test of consistency, of whether a culture can truly transform. Still, as dawn turned into night and night turned toward another day, one truth was undeniable. The bank that had humiliated its own CEO had been reborn, not in secrecy, but in the glare of public accountability. 6 months later, the story of Liberty National Bank was no longer one of disgrace, but one of transformation. What had begun with humiliation in a marble lobby had become a case study in resilience and reform. The statistics told the clearest story. Customer satisfaction scores had risen 127% across all demographic groups. New account openings in underserved communities had climbed 89%, and employee retention improved 76% as staff found themselves working in a culture that valued dignity rather than suspicion. The Liberty Equity Fund, launched with $25 million, had grown to $32 million through contributions from board members and outside partners, financing more than 400 minority-owned businesses and community financial literacy programs. The Liberty Watch app processed over 12,000 reports. With a 97% resolution rate, its transparency praised by regulators and copied by more than a dozen other banks. What had been a crisis was now a beacon, and the woman who had stood calmly while her staff threatened to expel her was now invited to speak at the American Bankers Association's annual conference in Miami. In front of 3,000 executives, Dr. Maya Johnson delivered a keynote that resonated across the industry. "Leadership is not about avoiding mistakes," she said, her voice steady, her pauses deliberate. "It is about how we respond when our values are tested. Do we protect appearances, or do we protect people?" The room erupted in applause, not polite, but genuine, as peers recognized a model of courage and accountability. Yet the legacy was not only in numbers or speeches, it was in the lives changed by that day in Chicago. Naomi Brooks, the young journalist whose live stream had captured the confrontation, now hosted a national program called Justice Stories on NBC, highlighting ordinary people who had turned moments of injustice into movements for change in her very first episode. She returned to Liberty's lobby to interview Maya, closing with the same question she always asked: "What would you tell someone facing discrimination today?" Maya's answer was simple: "Document everything. Speak your truth. Silence enables injustice, but voice creates change." Evelyn Walker, the 74-year-old customer who had spoken up in the lobby when others stayed quiet, had become an unofficial ambassador for the bank. Every month she attended community forums hosted by Liberty, sharing her experience with neighbors, reminding younger generations that courage does not retire. She often said with pride, "I've seen a lot of history, but I never thought I'd witness one person's courage change an entire institution." Her words carried the weight of decades, and they inspired trust in the bank she had nearly abandoned. Even the fallen found their stories reshaped. Michael Turner, the assistant manager whose arrogance had sparked the confrontation, entered a mandatory diversity education program funded by Liberty as part of its reform plan. 6 months of training, counseling, and community service stripped away his excuses, forcing him to confront the harm his words had caused. His first assignment had been to volunteer at financial literacy workshops on Chicago's South Side, where families asked him directly why bankers never trusted them. Their questions pierced deeper than any boardroom rebuke, and for the first time, he listened without defense in a public video testimonial, his voice subdued. He admitted, "I learned that good intentions do not erase harmful actions. Dr. Johnson showed me that true leadership means admitting failure and working to prevent others from repeating it." His career in banking was over, but his life was not. He found employment in a community development organization, humbled but determined to serve differently. Linda Barrett, once a respected regional manager, refused Liberty's offer of retraining and instead left the industry entirely. Her exit was quiet, her name now a cautionary tale in management training programs nationwide. David Collins, the vice president who had ordered Maya's removal, faced harsher consequences. Federal regulators reviewed his past decisions, uncovering patterns of discriminatory approvals and denials. He lost not only his job, but also his professional license. Barred from holding executive roles in financial institutions, his downfall became a case study taught in compliance seminars across the country, a reminder that power without accountability is a liability. Meanwhile, Liberty's reforms spread beyond its walls. Within months, 20 other major banks had adopted variations of the Liberty Watch app. Federal regulators established bias audit standards modeled on Liberty's own, and community investment funds across the industry increased by nearly $50 million. What began as one woman's humiliation had grown into a national movement for equity in banking. For Maya, the recognition was humbling, but never the point. She often returned quietly to the lobby where it all began, sometimes standing alone under the crystal chandeliers, reflecting on how quickly dignity can be stripped and how fiercely it must be defended. She remembered her father, denied a loan decades earlier because he did not look trustworthy. She thought of the irony that his daughter, once doubted the same way, now stood at the helm of one of the nation's most respected banks. One evening, after a long day of meetings, she confided to Ellen Rodriguez, her chief of staff, "When they told me I didn't belong, I realized they weren't just talking to me. They were talking to every person who has ever been told they don't fit the picture. That is why we had to change, not just for Liberty, but for everyone." Ellen nodded, understanding that this was not just about a bank, but about justice itself. 6 months later, The marble lobby of Liberty National no longer echoed with arrogance. It echoed with respect, with greetings offered equally, with customers of every background served with dignity. For those who had witnessed that day, the memory lingered, not as a scar, but as a turning point. And for the thousands who only saw it through a screen, the lesson was just as clear. One voice, steady and unshaken, can transform an institution, and one act of truth can ripple through an entire industry. Dr. Maya Johnson's story became more than a headline. It became a legacy, proof that humiliation could be turned into hope, and that justice, once spoken aloud, can never be silenced again. Thank you for watching. If you believe stories like this matter, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters.